Hey there, Cal here. What I'd like to do with today's video is use it to explain a little bit about my methodology and why Packard Wealth Strategies is different. And we're going to do this by solving a puzzle together. So let's get into it. The first thing we need to do is we need to have a basis of understanding of the two different approaches in financial planning. The first one is called a risk-based approach. This is when your advisor may give you a risk-based questionnaire and ask you how much risk you're willing to take. And then based on that, you'll be given some sort of model portfolio. And then they'll run a simulation and say, hey, look, you've got a 95% chance of being successful. Pretty good. Method two, on the other hand, is when you personalize a solution. And we're going to use liability matching to do that at Packard Wealth Strategies. So what our puzzle does is illuminate the differences between the two. Let's dive into it. This happens to be a picture of Lake Powell. And one of the things that Lake Powell is known for is its highly fluctuating water tables. So the white area on the cliffs there to the base of the water is actually more than 112 feet, which is pretty amazing. And one of the reasons it's so amazing, as you can imagine, the bank of the lake today can literally be miles away from what it will be one season to the next. And this conundrum sets up a interesting framework for our puzzle. And the puzzle is this. Let's say we're going to go camping at Lake Powell every year for the next 10 years. Except the rule of this game is that we have to set up our camp today and we can't move it. Now, the simple problem we have is that if the water rises, we could get wiped out if we're too close. And if it drops, we could be so far away that we don't actually get to enjoy the lake. So where are we going to put our camp? Now, if we use the traditional method, risk-based, how would we approach it? Well, the first thing we would need to do is predict how much water is going to flow through the lake. And of course, there can be many or a large amount of error. The second prediction we need to make is the volatility of the water levels. How often is it going to rise and fall? Now what we're going to do is we're going to take those predictions and we're going to offer a risk-based questionnaire to ask you how much water volatility you'd be willing to take. Now the solutions are on two ends of the spectrum. For the risk adverse, we're going to help you find a place to put your camp so that if the water level rises, you're not wiped out. And then we'd run a simulation based upon our predictions and say, hey, you've got a 90% probability of being successful, which is not being wiped out. There's a problem with this solution, by the way, is one, it's based on a statistical simulation. It very well could be wrong. Our predictions are often wrong. And if they are wrong, you'll get wiped out. And the second problem is it's expensive. It's an expensive solution because it's not very precise. And you're going to be investing a lot, and you might not get what you're looking for. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, we have the risk-tolerant investor. They're going to find a camp pretty close to that water level. So now that we understand the puzzle and we have our potential solutions or our choices, where would you put your camp? At Packard Wealth Strategies, we look at it very different. We don't build a camp. We build a boat. And in this case, it doesn't matter what happens to the water levels. I don't have to predict anything. The boat just floats. It's a perfect hedge. We don't minimize risk. We nullify it. So long as the boat floats, you're going to be okay. Now let's switch back to the risk-based investor for a moment. They answered the questionnaire, and they got a model portfolio, some mixture of stocks and intermediate bonds. Now, what happens when the interest rate goes up or inflation goes up? Well, cost of living goes up. At the exact same time, the value of those intermediate bonds go down. That's what we call the perfect asset-liability mismatch. Now, the reason this happens is because traditional solutions only think of risk in terms of volatility. But it's not volatility that matters to you. What matters to you is how the assets on the water level move in relationship to your needs. So what we're doing is putting together a personalized solution based upon the timing of your liabilities. So as we look to match assets with liabilities, how do we address rising inflation or rising interest rates? Well, we look for an asset that moves along with it to protect your spending. And that's basically called an inflation-protected bond. Could be Social Security, or it could be your military pension. What we're doing here is we're building a boat. So what we've done is created a hedge. At Packard Wealth Strategies, we build boats. If you're interested in your own boat, reach out to us today. Subscribe to our newsletter. Be in touch. And here's to being your trusted advisor of the future. Take care now.